Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's keep week 37 going with today's Third Age Thursday. This time around, it's our chance to revisit a most familiar and comfortable tale from the Third Age. Now, last week we eavesdropped at the Ivy Bush, watched as Gandalf arrived at Bag End, disappointing every young hobbit on the way, and listened in as Gandalf discussed Bilbo's party plans with him. Now, we're going to pick up after Gandalf expressed a bit of doubt about the cleverness of Bilbo's plans. "Who will laugh, I wonder," said Gandalf, shaking his head. "We shall see," said Bilbo. The next day, more carts rolled up the hill, and still more carts. There might have been some grumbling about dealing locally, but that very week orders began to pour out of Bag End for every kind of provision, commodity, or luxury that could be obtained in Hobbiton or Bywater or anywhere in the neighborhood. People became enthusiastic, and they began to tick off the days on the calendar, and they watched eagerly for the postman, hoping for invitations. Before long, the invitations began pouring out, and the Hobbiton post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and voluntary assistant postmen were called for. There was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on, "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End. No admittance except on party business. Even those who had or pretended to have party business were seldom allowed inside. Bilbo was busy, writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing up presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival, he remained hidden from view. One morning, the hobbits woke to find the large field south of Bilbo's front door covered with ropes and poles for tents and pavilions. A special entrance was cut into the bank leading to the road, and wide steps and a large white gate were built there. The three hobbit families of Bagshot Row adjoining the field were intensely interested and generally envied. Old Gaffer Gamgee stopped even pretending to work in his garden. The tents began to go up. There was a specially large pavilion, so big that the tree that grew in the field was right inside it, and stood proudly near one end, at the head of the chief table. Lanterns were hung on all its branches. More promising still, to the hobbit's mind, an enormous open-air kitchen was erected in the north corner of the field. A draft of cooks from every inn and eating house for miles around arrived to supplement the dwarves and other odd folk that were quartered at Bag End. Excitement rose to its height. Then the weather clouded over. That was on Wednesday, the eve of the party. Anxiety was intense. Then Thursday, September the 22nd, actually dawned. The sun got up, the clouds vanished, flags were unfurled, and the fun began. Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same, that did not matter. Many people from other parts of the Shire were also asked, and there were even a few from outside the borders. Bilbo met the guests and additions at the new White Gate in person. He gave away presents to all and sundry. The latter were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. Hobbits give presents to other people on their own birthdays. Not very expensive ones as a rule, and not so lavishly as on this occasion, but it was not a bad system. Actually, in Hobbiton and Bywater, every day in the year was somebody's birthday, so that every hobbit in those parts had a fair chance of at least one present at least once a week. But they never got tired of them. On this occasion, the presents were unusually good. The hobbit children were so excited that for a while they almost forgot about eating. There were toys the like of which they had never seen before, all beautiful, and some obviously magical. Many of them had indeed been ordered a year before, and had come all the way from the mountain and from Dale, and were of real dwarf make. When every guest had been welcomed and was finally inside the gate, there were songs, dances, music, games, and of course, food and drink. There were 3 official meals: lunch, tea, and dinner, or supper. But lunch and tea were marked chiefly by the fact that at those times all the guests were sitting down and eating together. At other times, there were merely lots of people eating and drinking, continuously from 11s until 6:30 when the fireworks started. And we'll talk more about those fireworks next week. Now, of course, we know that Gandalf is well known for his fireworks in the Shire. Not only did he disappoint the young ones by not giving away a single squib or cracker upon his arrival, cast your mind back to the first chapter of The Hobbit, where Gandalf was described by Bilbo as the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid! They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnums of fire and hang in the twilight all evening. Now, for more on laburnums, by the way, if you're a patron of the Prancing Pony podcast, Sarah and I spend the entire postscript on them in episode 319, talking about the field of Cormallen. Now, going back to this, just looking at some of the description about the time leading up to the party, ticking days off the calendar, waiting for the postman, hoping for printed invitations to arrive in the mail, these are all reminders of the intended time and place of the Shire. As Hammond and Skull point out, the Shire is based on rural England at the end of the 19th century. They point out that things like the postal service with local offices, printed invitations, fireworks, silk waistcoats, and more are all reminders of that fact. Now, one last thing, or at least a teaser of one last thing. In letter number 214, that was a draft to a reader who had thought there was an inconsistency in the idea of hobbits giving gifts on their own birthdays and Gollum referring to the ring as his birthday present. Now, honestly, reading the description of his letter, I can't tell if he's being a genuine pedant or playfully getting Tolkien to expand on this, but that's something for another day. The point is that Tolkien explains a bit more about this birthday tradition, but it's a long and detailed explanation, so we'll visit it next week so I can spend a little bit of time on it before we get back into the reading. Now, folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. Come back next week as we talk about the Hobbit birthday gift tradition, and then return for the most amazing fireworks you've ever not actually seen. Check out patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get bonus episodes, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for my repeated attempts at reading poetry. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know the drill. Like and subscribe. And please, if you're listening to it on a podcast app, follow or subscribe there. And please follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.